Hi again, everybody, and welcome to a special pre-Independence Day punditry edition of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. We are recording on Monday, June 30th, 2025, day 161 of the Donald Trump regime, for those keeping score at home. We've made it through 11% of the second term of the game show host president, and tell us how we're going to make it through the next 1,299. Welcome back. I want to welcome back to the program Mark Z. Barabak, my old friend and colleague, and most important, the ace political columnist of the Los Angeles Times. How you doing, brother?
I'm okay. How about you?
Oh, living a dream. Yeah. So listen, we are about to observe. I may even hold this for July 4th, the 249th birthday of our nation. So I want to ask you to level set, to put on your George Will hat and engage in some heavy duty punditry here. What? Just say a word, if you would, about this political moment we're in. Certainly nothing resembles anything I know in my lifetime, maybe 1968, but not
Mm,
really.
a word. Wow. A word. Fraught. Disturbing. That's two words. Unsettling. Unprecedented. I mean, I could go on with the adjectives. But yeah, this is. I mean, we're both. I guess we're both old enough now to be considered wise men, perhaps, or something. But look, I don't think either of us have seen anything remotely like this in either of our lifetimes. So that goes back to the whole unprecedented thing. The fraught part, I mean, you look back over the last year, two assassination attempts on Trump's life, lawmakers in Minnesota who were assassinated, people being plucked off the streets by masked men, maybe women, seemingly because they have brown skin. A Supreme Court that doesn't seem very inclined. I guess we'll get around to that decision. I have some sort of mixed thoughts on that. A Supreme Court that doesn't seem very inclined to rein in a president who is hell bent on not just pushing the envelope, but breaking through the envelope, shredding the envelope. A Congress, Democrats who are not in the position to do very much. Republicans who are in a position not doing anything. Like I said, these are pretty rough, choppy times we're living in.
Yeah. And when you and I worked together back before the last ice age, I was, of course, always the catastrophist of the partnership. You were the sunny optimist, and have remained so through the years. Particularly, in your outlook on life and politics, and the future lies ahead. But I have to say that in some of your recent columns, I have noted a note of pessimism creeping in. Your piece you wrote recently on the uh, president summoning troops for whatever reason to the streets of Los Angeles. You say none of which justifies the conduct of a president who, when faced with flames, comes running with gasoline. Instead of a steady hand or the consoler in chief, we have a political arsonist residing in the White House. We can hope for the best, but this will probably not end well. Was that the Mark Z. Baerback I know?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, it's possible. I mean, look, it's possible to be an optimist and a realist. And that particular column dealt with the wholly unnecessary dispatch of the National Guard to LA to put down what were basically your garden variety protests. I don't think at the time I'd written that the Marines had showed up just to add injury to insult, to use a cliche. But look, I still remain optimistic. I mean, look, I'm a realist, and you can look at things in the short term and the immediate moment, which, as I suggested, are very unsettling and very disturbing. I would venture to say very un-American even. But at the end of the day, I am optimistic. I do think, look, this country has been through a lot, which is maybe the biggest understatement of the last 10 minutes we've been talking. But civil wars. We've had Supreme Courts that have made some horrific decisions, right? Dred Scott, which denied citizenship to black people. Plessy versus Ferguson, which said, hey, separate but equal is okay. So we've been through a lot. No one alive today can speak to those particular moments. And, that's the funny thing about living in our times. We have nothing to compare it to. You can go back and you can say, well, it was inevitable that the North was going to win and slavery was going to be abolished. And it's inevitable that we were going to win. The Allies were going to win World War II and fascism was going to be defeated. But in those moments, it was not at all clear. It was not at all clear for a long time. In fact, the North was losing the Civil War for a very long time. The first 2 years of World War II, we were getting our butts kicked. And it was not at all clear that we were going to prevail. So, we have the benefit of hindsight in that things end up coming out okay. We don't have this in this immediate moment. I hope things are going to come out okay. I mean, what's the alternative? To curl up in the fetal position? I mean, I'm not ready to do that.
That's what I do. I don't know. That's okay for me. All right, I'm going to very Tim Russert throw some more of your words back at you.
Oh boy, okay.
Here, but
here we go.
For those of you who are not subscribing to my Mark's column, I don't know what's wrong with you. If you want to know what's going on in politics in California across the nation, you really need to do that. So anyway, you had a rather bittersweet a piece about an iconic figure in California politics, Stu Spencer, and they had a little event for him out in the desert there not too long ago. He was 97, I think, when he passed.
Yeah, I know he was pushing 100.
And
it was 97. Yeah, 97. Yeah.
I can't remember if the temperature was 98 and he was 97 or vice versa. But I think it was. I think I got it right. But the theme of it was that it was sort of this group, a collection of people who came to honor Stu, who were from a different time. I mean, Pete Wilson was there. There were a lot of old, moderate Republicans and a lot of Democrats there when it wasn't warfare, when it was disagreements. People disagreed, and your opponents were not your enemies.
Yeah.
And you wrote this, but quoting someone, but politics are cyclical, he went on, and surely Trump and his MAGA movement will run their course, and the GOP will return to the days when Reagan's optimism and dignity and Spencer's less hateful campaign style returns to fashion. He gripped his white wine like a potion, delivering hope. Don't you think? Well, that was the old cheap columnist escape, ending on a quote. So,
I mean, look, Stu, just to inform your billions of viewers around the world, Stu Spencer was a very interesting guy. He was the guy who essentially made Ronald Reagan. I mean, Ronald Reagan was this washed-up B-movie actor. Stu Spencer and his then partner, Bill Roberts, turned him into what they called a, quote, citizen politician, elected him governor, the rest being history. Stu was really a joy to know. He was an incredibly smart political tactician, but he was a good and decent guy. And he saw the humor in politics and he saw the humanity in politics. I mean, I don't want to be the old guy wheezing about the good old days, right? There was a lot of animosity, there was anger, there was fighting, there was this, there was that. But at the end of the day, there was a recognition that people were professionals and that they could fundamentally disagree but not hate each other and not be evil. And it was more about getting stuff done. I mean, we've talked a lot about this whole performative school of politics. We talked about Dianne Feinstein and how she was out of step because so much of today is performative. It's owning the libs. It's destroying MAGA, right? I mean, great, good, fine, clicks, views, whatever. But there was a sense that there was another quote in there. I think it was from Harvey Englander, it was Harvey Englander, a Democrat. We were standing there, Joel Fox, a Republican, wandered up to her.
This is how politics used to be. We had different views of how government should work, but we agreed government should work. Great minds think alike.
Well, exactly. Just this idea that you could disagree. I mean, now there's this sort of this nihilistic notion that has taken hold, and I'm not doing the both sides thing, it's taken hold of the Republican Party, this nihilist thing that government should be destroyed, that government serves no purpose whatsoever. And I mean, I think the point Harvey was making, which I agree, is you can disagree about how government should work, but at least there was this consensus that government should work. So I went to that occasion, and like I said, without trying to be too rosy-eyed and reminiscent, it was very reflective of a time when as I said, Democrats, Republicans, and even the odd, and I use that word, even the odd columnists could show up and be welcomed.
Yeah. And not only was Stu like that, but Reagan himself was like that. The sort of good-natured person you describe. And you and I both covered politics through both terms of both Reagan terms, and he was the great Satan to Democrats. But
Yeah.
I don't think he could win a Republican primary today.
No, he could not. In fact, I did a column some years back. Actually, I did a piece. It wasn't a column back then. I was a reporter, but I did a piece walking up to a debate. I think it was in 2012 at the Reagan Library, and I quoted Stu at that time, who actually went through a very interesting evolution. He told me before he died, he voted for, couldn't bring himself to vote for Hillary Clinton. He voted for Joe Biden, though, in 2020. He said it was the first Democrat he voted for since Harry Truman. And his rationale was, he said, I was in the Navy, and Truman brought me home, so he got my vote. But he had not voted for a Democrat since Biden. But the point he made was, I think I headlined the column something like Ronald Rhino, because a California governor who signed then the largest tax increase in American history and the most liberal abortion bill. I mean, look, I don't have to tell you. I mean, the guy wouldn't get, I know if he'd even make it out of the starting gate, running for president. But the point that Stu made, look, I'm not a Reagan worshiper to any extent. But the point that Stu made was two things about Reagan. Fundamentally, he was pragmatic. And the thing that I do and did respect about Reagan is the fact that he brought dignity to the office. I mean, say what you will about Trump. Reagan is the guy who literally would not walk into the Oval Office without a suit jacket on, would not take it off while he was working. And no one wanted to go on the record criticizing Trump. The closest was a guy named, I'm blanking on his name, Steffens. He was Ronald Reagan's legislative secretary. Closest anyone came to criticizing Trump was, by point of comparison, he said, I worked for Ronald Reagan for 5 years, never heard him put anyone down, never heard him insult anybody. And that's a big part of what to me is so disgusting about Trump. You can disagree about policy, but the name calling, low IQ and stupid and scumbag and all, it's like what's the point? I mean, really, you can disagree on policy, but to denigrate, to act like a 5-year-old, I mean, would you let your kids talk like that? And this is the president of the United States. I mean, really, can't we do better? Can't he do better?
That's the problem, is that he's created this vast permission structure for it in the culture.
Yes.
And the kind of people who are succeeding in politics,
well,
and in the media are aping that.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'm also going to take, I also have some criticism of Democrats. I was recently at the state Democratic Party convention in Anaheim. And I mean, you would have thought that you were in a newsroom or something. I mean, one F-bomb after another. And, again, going to the performative thing, it's like, I'm going to show people that I'm authentic and I'm passionate, so I'm going to drop a lot of F-bombs. It's like, okay, by the 20th or the 50th time, it got kind of performative. It's like, okay, we get your point. So, again, it's like aping and emulating Trump. It's what, I guess what Patrick Moynihan said about defining deviancy down. I mean, that's really what Trump has done. He's really defined politics and political discourse down, and things that would have been shocking. I mean, I mentioned in one column, George W. Bush, or it was Dick Cheney. Someone will remember. I think it was 2000 when he was campaigning with Cheney. Yeah, it had to have been 2000. And they were caught. Cheney was caught on a hot mic, and I don't know if I can use the word, so I won't. But he used a colorful epithet to criticize Adam Clymer of the New York Times, and it was picked up on a hot mic. And Bush apologized because, this was a scandal. I mean, it was also a scandal. In '88 when Bush was running, and he called Clinton and Gore bozos, and people were like, "Oh my God, the president calling his opponents bozos." I mean, he apologized, and I mean, okay, so it's not the end of the world. Maybe it's a little bit of pearl clutching going on, but compare that now to Trump and the things that he routinely says that we just kind of shrug off and, well, that's Trump.
Yeah, and that. I think that's my sort of long-term concern as we look ahead to the next 1,299 days. This is all becoming normalized. Yeah. I mean, those National Guard troops are still in LA. Yeah. Those Marines are still deployed doing domestic law enforcement on the border. The idea of we need to send troops to blue cities and blue states. Kristi Noem, the DHS secretary, saying, "We're not going anywhere. We're here to liberate Los Angeles
Right.
from the people you elected." Um,
Right.
and so I guess my concern is not as much they don't want government to do anything, but they have more of I'm going to say it, a fascist view of using the power of the state against their political enemies. For my friends, everything; for my enemies, the law.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what's concerning to me the most as we just get deeper. I mean, it's not like, okay, we got through the first 6 months, everything's going to be okay. They're going to keep going. They're
Right.
going to keep doing this stuff.
Right. No, they've shown, like I said, I mean, Trump's not just pushing the envelope; he's broken through the envelope and shredded it and wiped his feet on it. All those sorts of things. I mean, I guess the reason I remain fundamentally optimistic and hopeful, I do believe that there's nothing that the voters can't remedy. I've said, and I'll say it again: there's no organism on planet Earth more sensitive to heat and light than a politician. And if people don't like this, then what do? You vote out of office the people who are doing these things. And when and if people find they will pay a political price, whether it's, talking about liberating cities or cursing up a blue streak or whatever it is that you don't like. If people don't like it, and enough people don't like it, again, there's nothing that the voters can't remedy given the opportunity. That's the good thing. The bad thing about our system is, we don't have snap elections. Voters are going to have to wait. What's it now? About a year and a half or so till they can finally wait. We have elections every 2 years, basically, essentially, right? So we don't have snap elections. You can't call an election the way you can in Israel to dissolve the government or other countries. We need to wait 2 years. It is my hope that in 2026, and history does show, it's like physics. There is an equal and opposite reaction. If people push things too far, there is a backlash, and I'm hoping that backlash comes. And frankly, I don't think. I think I even wrote at the end of one column, 2026 can't come soon enough.
Yeah. Well, one of the 8,000 newsletters I subscribe to is called Democracy Docket by a guy named Mark Elias,
Yeah.
election lawyer and everything.
Yep.
He occasionally raises doubts about whether we're going to have a 26 election. But that's a discussion for another day. We can talk about that another time, because I'm going to go back to talking about the Democrats a little bit that you just were saying, and I have to say, I mean, it would be funny if it was in another time, but this spectacle of them. They're having retreats and workshops and PowerPoint presentations about how to be authentic. It's kind of funny.
Right.
How can we become authentic? In 9 ways. We'll have a 7-point program to become authentic. But uh, part of what's happened and what makes this term so different than Trump's first term is that so many institutions immediately capitulated. Business did, obviously tech did. Law firms did, many universities are, and the Democratic Party. I think the kindest thing I could say about it is feckless. And then you have our governor, who was once, the leader of the resistance, and then decided to become Trump's friend, and now is back to being the leader of resistance. And you've chronicled his back and forth. I know they like to handle your column when it comes into the governor's office with hazmat gloves. But talk a little bit about Gavin and the Democrats, and why they've been so ineffective.
Well, I'll take those sequentially. I mean, look, I have been critical of our governor when I thought it was merited, and I have been praiseful of our governor when I mean, look, I think I wrote a column saying I think he was doing the right thing when he was trying to make nice with Trump. I mean, look, California, I think I wrote that very soon after the wildfires. Maybe they were still burning, but very soon after the wildfires in LA. And look, my feeling is if it took making nice with Trump to serve the people of California that Gavin was elected to serve, then fine. Then do what you need to do. Suck it up. I think I even made a crack about, not since he dined at the French Laundry had he had to swallow so much indigestible fare. But if that's what it took, more power to him. Trump being Trump, he was Gavin's ally for a day and a half, maybe a week or
Well,
two,
that's
and
the
then
thing. Nothing sticks.
well, and that's the thing, and he reverted to form. So Gavin has, like I said, now this week he's back on. I mean, I would say it doesn't speak greatly to the constancy of our governor. One week, the next week, the next week. Right now, he's the leader of the resistance. Who knows what next week will bring? I will say a couple things, sort of in defense of Democrats. I mean, look, there's only so much they can do. They do not have the votes. Period. Full stop. They just don't have the votes in Congress. They have their voices. I don't think Democrats have been shy about voicing their concerns. Yeah, but here again, I mean, you and I are both long enough to remember. We remember the Democrats wandering around the wilderness after they got beaten in 1988. We remember them wandering around the wilderness until Bill Clinton showed up. I had a column, and again, they all blur together. And I wish I had it in front of me, but it was referring to an autopsy, quote unquote, that the Republicans did after 2012, talking about the party seeming run by a gerontocracy, a lot of stale ideas, in particular, weren't appealing to minorities and young people. I mean, all you have to do is substitute Republican for Democrat, and you are where we are today. And of all things, they recommended, we need to reach out to minorities and Latinos. And what do? 4 years later, they nominate Donald Trump, who wins the White House. So, it's like William Golden said, it's probably the best single piece of advice I can offer, and I follow. Nobody knows anything, right? We can sit there and we can talk all day long and all night long about Democrats need to do this. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. Blah blah blah. Nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
That's the dirty little secret. Nobody knows anything.
Well, I'm glad we had this talk. You're not supposed to say that till the end. The so does so does that mean that the Democrats need their own Trump? Somebody who's outside of politics. People really do seem sick of listening to politicians. A Mark Cuban type of person, somebody who's just sort of a name brand or brand name celebrity.
It's funny. A thought occurred to me recently, and I haven't written about it because it's just sort of a vague, sort of weird notion. But I look back. Let's skip over Joe Biden, and not for the reasons you might think, but just because 2020 was such a strange thing. I mean, I was there with Biden. The guy couldn't draw flies in New Hampshire. I was in an event. It was sad. It was embarrassing. I went from this gym.
This is the 2020 election you're talking
2020, about. Yeah. I went to this, it was in New Hampshire, this gymnasium filled to the rafters for Elizabeth Warren, and then and then I went to Biden's headquarters, and I mean, it was sad. It was pathetic, and then fast forward 6 weeks later, he's the nominee. So it was just such a strange thing with COVID. So we're gonna set aside Biden. If you look at the last two people who were elected president, what did they have in common? Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Neither of them thought they were going to win. I was thinking about a column that I did, not a column, sorry, a story that I did. I did stories for 40-some years and columns for the last 4 or 5. Forced the habit. I did a story in the summer of 2008 talking about how Obama did it. I went back to Chicago and talked to David Axelrod and Pluff and all of the people of his campaign. And the bottom line was they didn't think they were going to win. They didn't think they were going to win. So they did all this stuff that made no sense. Like, you know what? Let's try and excite a lot of people, like young people and black voters who never turn out. Because you know what? The conventional wisdom is you can't expand the universe. Every election people talk about, we're going to expand the universe, and it never happened. Well, guess what? They tried it, and they did it. Donald Trump didn't think he was going to win. I mean, he was running for president as a lark. It was a way to build his brand, and he woke up, holy smokes, he's president. The point being, I don't know if Democrats need an outsider, and I'm not offering any prescriptions, but I just wonder if the person who's going to win in 2028 is going to be the candidate who no one knows of, just like this like points in 2016 and 2008, no one had gave Barack Obama or Trump any chance at all or much of a chance. I wonder if it's not going to be someone who just says, you know what, the hell with it. We're probably going to lose. Let's just do something different. Let's do something unconventional. I don't know what that's going to be. I call it the Chris Christopherson approach to politics, right? Janet Joplin made the song famous, but he wrote it, right? Freedom is another word for nothing left to lose. So maybe there's going to be someone running in 2028 who no one gives any chances, is going to say, you know what, the hell with it. I'm probably going to lose, so I'm going to just do things different and unconventional. And maybe that's going to be the surprise person who's going to win the Democratic nomination. Don't know who that could be, but that might be the approach.
Give me your quick thumbnail take on, the Democratic governors who everybody assumes are sort of, going to be at the front of the line. We mentioned Gavin and I know you feel like another California liberal is probably not what the party's looking for.
Yeah, yeah, very skeptical of him. I mean, I have not laid eyes. Well, I have laid eyes. I have not been in the same room. I don't think with any of those who are running. I mean, Josh Shapiro, I was not impressed with. He spoke at the Democratic convention in last summer, and it was like, dude, drop the Obama. I mean, it was just like it was like he was trying to be Obama mini me. I found it really stagey and performative and off-putting. Maybe he'll be better. Don't know about Westmore. I'll tell you who I was very, very impressed with at this convention in Anaheim going on a month or so. It was Tim Walz.
Yeah.
I thought he gave a terrific speech, and I'm thinking, where was this guy on the debate stage with J.D. Vance? Because I mean, it's funny. I remember writing and reading the time where Walz, when he was being interviewed by Kamala Harris's team, said, "I'm a lousy debater," and Lord knows he is, and he was. He was a terrible debater. But he gave a terrific speech. I mean, he gave a terrific speech. He was blunt. He was honest. He seemed real. And the thing that he said that really struck me that was really, really interesting was, I mean, yes, we are super polarized, and there is this segment of the public that is very rigidly R or blue. But he said to a lot of people, a lot of voters in the middle, who are frankly the ones who are deciding the elections. By the middle, I mean conflating the direction. He said for them, it's not about ideology. It's about I hate to use the word because I'll come back to it in a minute, authenticity, believability, relatability. And I think it's why you have people who are attracted to AOC and Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump because they seem real. They don't seem stagey. And I thought he made a very, very interesting, very valid point that our politics now are less about ideology for those people who can be had, who are free floating, who aren't wed strongly one part or the other. And what attracts them is a relatability or a feeling that these people speak to me. And I thought that was a really, really interesting and valid point that he made. And I'm going to go back to the authenticity thing because you know what? We're old enough to have been through this. I mean, I mentioned previous election cycles. In 1999, I did a piece about how the buzzword was authenticity. Authenticity. And it was really funny because you were talking about Democrats holding these so many. Al Gore had come out, had done all sorts of focus grouping, and what was her name, Naomi Wolf, or something. This
Naomi Wolf, yeah.
It was telling them to her earth tone, so it was sort of like here's how to fake authenticity. But it's really funny because again, it's like there really is nothing new under the sun. So once again, we're back, and now authenticity is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the other big piece of it, I agree with Walls to a certain extent. It's also, where are people getting their information and what information are they getting? I mean, what do you think? 30% of America actually follows this stuff? I mean, you and I follow it, of course,
Right.
obsessively, probably very, very unhealthily so, but
Yeah.
the majority of Americans aren't paying attention, I don't think, to what's going on with Donald Trump on any given day in the White House.
No, I don't, I can't speak for anyone but myself, but I do learn something from every election I cover. And what 2024 taught me is you can talk about all sorts of highfalutin, abstract things like democracy and the importance of the rule of law and all these things, which I'm not in any way diminishing. But for a lot of people, it's how much does gas cost? How much do eggs cost? How much does bacon cost? So I think one of the things that Walz and like a lot of Democrats are saying is you need to speak to people where they live and speak to their lived experience and not speak in abstractions. And, that gets into the whole discourse. Well, you throw trans people under the bus, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. But I mean, I think Democrats rightly are coming to the notion that, again, it's about addressing people's lives. People who, like I said, don't pay attention to this thing, don't know every in and out, don't know what's in this huge bill that the Senate's talking about, don't know what Democrats have done or saying or this or Republicans or anything of that matter. They only know their lived experience, and they only know whether they feel people, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Vegetarian, are speaking to that.
Yeah. And if, with Biden, not to pick on Biden, but I mean, it's like, well, we'll talk to the New York Times, or we won't talk to the New York Times in his case. And, maybe we'll do Meet the Press once and do a CNN hit. I mean, that's not going to cut it. I mean, I think we're going to look back on 2024 and it's like, that the Kamala Harris campaign had to have a huge internal debate about whether she was going to go on Joe Rogan. Really? I mean, you have to go on Joe Rogan. You have to do everything. You have to be out there doing all of it.
And that goes to what I was saying earlier about the unconventional. I mean, if you think about who was the breakout star of 2020 before Joe Biden, before COVID and everything collapsed over the course of really 4 or 5 days, it was Pete Buttigieg. I mean,
Yeah.
Pete Buttigieg, he was everything. He was everywhere. It's like, you couldn't, you went to brush your teeth in your bathroom mirror and there he was talking to something, right? I mean, he was ubiquitous and there was a novel strategy at the time. And again, I think it was this idea, look, I'm the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. What the hell have I got to lose? So he went everywhere and went on everything. And I think you're right. And I think, if there's a danger, it's, there's going to be something new in 2028. But, political parties, I mean, I've written, there is no more derivative business outside Hollywood than politics. So everyone's going to assume, 2028 is going to be the podcast. So you go on Joe Rogan, you go on this, and you go on that. We may have moved on at that point. And who knows what the new media or medium, the new medium is going to be. Want to get my
Well,
10
I,
cents.
for one, am going to be speaking to my Chat GBT avatar. So,
Yeah, there you go.
who needs an audience? All right. You've been so generous with your time, but I do want to just ask you about one more thing is one of the things I like about your column, which, by the way, you should all be subscribing to, is you really do look for sort of hopeful things or good things that are happening from time to time. And you had two I just want to point to recently. One was on this food distribution operation up in the Bay Area, White Pony, I think it was called. And then
Yeah.
yeah, you talked to a Marin County supervisor, first black supervisor ever in a county which is 2% black.
Yeah.
Brian Colbert. I mean, do you like intentionally look for stuff about here's something that can channel my optimism that Jerry doesn't share. This will piss him off, or does that just kind of come about naturally?
No, I mean, take them singly. It comes out kind of natural. I'm just, I mean, don't tell anybody. But one of the dirty secrets, I just kind of write about things that I find interesting, and fun, and I don't know that I find intriguing. And I saw something a local TV station did something some months ago about Brian Colbert, first black supervisor in Marin County history since he was founded in 1840 something, soon after the gold rush. And I just made a note of it. I was squirreling things away, and I just thought it'd be interesting to talk to this guy. I mean, here's someone obviously in this time when DEI has become a 4-letter word. I was just interested in his perspective. So I sat down with him. The White Pony Express, if anybody wants to throw any contributions their way, they do terrific work. What they do is they go around and they collect food from Whole Foods, Trader, food that would otherwise go to waste. Perfectly good food. I mean, it's not the dregs. It's good food that for whatever reason they can't use, and they process it and then they take it out to hungry people. I mean, what could be more righteous than and the other thing is this is food that would otherwise go to a landfill and put off gases that create clothes. So it's a win-win-win. It's a terrific thing. The point I wanted to make was they're doing all this great work, and they're now facing a cutback in how many people they're going to be able to serve because of Trump's budget cuts. At the same time, Trump was throwing this really vainglorious, grotesque military parade for himself. So in that case, I was looking, I just want to draw the contrast between selflessness and selfishness. And it was just as simple as that.
Yeah. And I guess, just to close the circle, that's the biggest concern I have about the Trump presidency. Every president in my lifetime, at least, even Nixon, it was about the country, and maybe their ideas were good, maybe their ideas weren't, maybe there was a little on the side for them or something, but it was about what's the best thing for the country. That's not any piece of what this guy's doing.
No, we are being led by a deeply narcissistic, transactional, tactical president who only cares about himself, his ego, how something is playing in the short term. I think he even said something to the effect of, with Iran, well, I'll be out of office, so it's not going to be my concern. So no, no long-term thinking, no altruism, no good of the country. which could be very dispiriting if you let it. But again, always looking on that bright side.
So
Always
look, speaking
hopeful.
of the bright side, so are you going to begin writing your election advances on the midterms
Oh
pretty
Lord.
soon?
Oh, we're a ways from that. We're a ways from that. I do have, there's going to be, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I am looking forward to. I mean, off years can be a little fallow. I mean, they give you time to write about things like Brian Colbert and some less immediate things, right? But once election year rolls around, it's gonna you're kind of tied to the agenda and the calendar and some elections. But it's going to be interesting, and I am hopeful. I mean, I know that fear. I mean, that to me, people say, when would you worry? When I would start going from somewhat sanguine to panic is if we did cancel the elections. But the good thing is our elections are so decentralized. It's not like there's a on-off toggle that Donald Trump can flip. What I predict is going to happen, and mark my words, but if Democrats take control, then you're going to see all sorts of talk about fraud and this, and that's when we're really gonna that's when we're really gonna hit the fan, right?
Yeah. Well, the
Imagine
whole
Democrats
thing.
taking control of the House, and then Trump throwing all this stuff up there and all these court challenges, and two people showing up trying to claim a seat. That's when we're really in the soup. But maybe it won't come to that.
Yeah, the whole thing breaks down if with elections if one party refuses to accept that any election they lose is legit. I mean, it's just
Right. That's when the rubber really hits the road, and that's when things could really, really get dicey. And it's just my hope that it is such a definitive and decisive verdict. And being a columnist, I'm allowed to express opinions. Hopefully, Democrats taking back the House. I think it's a long shot for the Senate, but basically putting a check in there. I mean, one last column I did, the last one that ran was talking about Democrats in Sacramento and the really obnoxious and juvenile and high-handed bullying of a Republican. And it's just, look, we need, for this country to work and function, we need.
and I have to say about that column, I I can't believe that you made me feel sorry for Carl DeMail.
Well, I mean, look, I think, I mean, someone to quote someone who responded, I mean, crappy behavior is crappy behavior, whoever it's directed at. And I mean, I have never met Carl DeMail. I've never spoken with him. I've never even had any message exchange. He had no idea the piece was coming. I've not heard from him. But if you believe, as I do, in this country, in this democracy, and happy birthday, America, and all that stuff, you really need competition. You need a vigorous and vital two-party system or a multi-party system where one side's keeping the other in check. And that's why I'm rooting for a democratic, convincing democratic victory in 2026, because I think Donald Trump has shown abundantly that he needs some sort of check on his otherwise total reckless power grab.
Yeah. All right. Well, happy birthday, America. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
See Barabak, ace political columnist for the Los Angeles Times, which you really should be subscribing to. He said for the third time. Thanks for taking the time before the holiday. Well, I guess it's not. Yeah, it is a weekend. Yeah, sure it is. Okay. Anyway, Z, thanks so much, and
Thanks for having me.
for watching, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.